Welcome to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. I'm your host, Sadia, and this is my mother, Ema. Hey, Ema.
Hello, my sweetness. Hey, today
Hey.
was fun. We had a fun day today. We went to the zoo. Hey, talk about Colomoid trips.
Yes, Chalamoid. It was fun. Well, I like the fact that like Tati had a rule where like he would take off for Chalamoid and he would spend time with the family. And that's how, we would go on all sorts of places and all over Maryland and Pennsylvania and Virginia and Virginia. And we would really get to appreciate and have fun with him. I kind of did that this year, but like we'll see what happens for Sukkot. We'll see what happens for next Pesach. I'm not trying to go too hard, but I would like to take off for Holomoy and spend time with my family. That's something I feel like is more important than crunching numbers, I guess. But I had a fun question. If you can erase all of your exes from your memory, would you do it and why?
No, absolutely not. Because I think from every ex, from everybody you date, I was only married once.
Yeah.
But for every boy that or girl that you date and that you break up with, whatever, you learn something. And the experiences you have with that person make you who you are today. Yeah, our experiences make us what we are today.
Yeah.
And I think I learned some very valuable lessons from some of my exes. I think I'm fun
Would you?
dating some of my exes. We really had we went to the amusement parks, we went hiking. We had some really fun times.
It's fun.
Dances, remember the dances we went to?
See, I do agree that there were times you would have fun with your ex and like you want to hold on to those memories. For me, it's more of like I would rather hold on to remember what to do, what not to do, what worked, what didn't work, in a sense of like just I understand, I didn't grow up with the chance to actually date anyone in high school.
Mhm.
Dating in college was kind of weird because at first I would be dating different people, but because I was like so used to like, oh, what's the next one going to be like? What's the next thing going to be like? I couldn't really appreciate the people I was with. And eventually I just decided to put my foot down and start getting serious and dated one person for a long time. Um, and then like what happened was I learned how to behave. I think that's really what happens is that like you don't realize who you are until you're with somebody else. You know,
That's a good quote.
you really
That's a
don't.
good quote. That deserves to be put on a bumper
It
sticker.
it could be put on a bumper sticker, but
Say that again. You don't know who you are until you're with somebody else. Yeah, right.
yeah, because what happens is you might have some bad habits or some perspective or some attitude that you're just so used to having you don't know it's a problem, or if people tell you it's a problem you don't really bother changing because the people who are telling you about it are like I don't say beneath you, but it's not you don't care what they think.
Right.
And once you're in a relationship, whether it worked out or not, if they say something to you, it should like on some level, if your significant other says something to you where like what you need to work on, it should take some kind of impact to be like, maybe this is a problem, maybe I do need to work on this. Um, and that's why like I would like to hold on to all the memories because it'll make sure that I stay the improved version of myself, not the person I was before, them.
That's so true. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my problem is I was a teenage girl growing up. I think that typical teenage girl. I think there were many times I was like I say, I was nasty, stuck up, that type of thing. I should have been kinder, I could have been nicer. And I think that's why, a lot of boys would, eventually broke up with me.
I mean, would you tease them too hard, or would you just be really obnoxious? Would you be demanding? Would you be
Yeah.
like, "Well, pull the chair out for me. I demand to be treated like a
Mm,
princess."
not quite like that, but just okay, there's one time that um me and my boyfriend were going to go out with another couple, and he what's the matter?
When you put your feet on, when you constantly put your elbow down,
Oops,
it shakes the
sorry,
laptop
sorry.
and it shakes the screen, and we're
Mm,
trying to hold on to screen time, even though
so,
everything
yeah.
looks all banged up.
Okay.
Whatever. Continue. You're saying you're
So
being
anyway,
horrible to your boyfriend.
no, that's what happened was I yeah, I was kind of mean to him.
Okay.
But anyway, he wanted to give there was somebody who needed a ride. So instead of going right to where we were going to go, He said,
Oh
"We're
yeah,
doing
you
he"
told me
yeah, I
this.
told
We,
you
we talked
yeah, and
about
I
this
was
on the
really
podcast.
nasty, yeah.
We're repeating ourselves.
We
Oh
are
my gosh,
we're
it's
getting
been so long.
we're getting old, so we're repeating our
Well, it's
stories.
it's funny because like this year, in the next couple of days is the art set of my father,
Mhm.
and that was like the beginning of me starting this podcast with you because of I didn't want to go ahead and like not have any memories with
Wow.
you because I looked at everything with Tati and I couldn't find that much. There was
Mhm.
only like one or two house videos, home videos, um, and they weren't, and there were just like a handful. I was able, fine, but there
Mhm.
wasn't anything really more
You wanna
concrete.
get some memories before I kick off, huh?
Yeah, probably that's how it gets boils down to. I mean, the average human life.
Money, I don't know, but memories I got there.
It's just it's I think this is all gonna be worth in the end. I think it's something where I appreciate, and when I do it, it helps me set a reminder to spend time with you and to do things because
Aw.
life gets real hectic, life gets
Mhm.
real moving, and like you start forgetting to do things that you normally were on top of back in the day.
Yeah.
Having a kid, you start forgetting other stuff. Like this whole time, like I normally would like to spend time with my immediate family of my brothers and sisters, but because I have a little, kid, I'm now more involved in like his life and trying to do what I can to keep, everything going
Mhm.
on with him. So like everyone else was doing their thing and I wasn't getting offended. I wasn't like upset that I was left alone. I'm like, oh, I have my own stuff to worry about. I got my own kid, my own family.
Mhm.
I'm trying to keep things paced. That's why like when you were taking your time today at the zoo, I wasn't getting so offended because I'm like, okay, you're at the zoo, you're taking your time. I got to spend time with you. I got to spend time with my kid, my wife. Like I'm not like I don't have to go anywhere. It's
Mhm.
fine. I get to finally relax. I think that's also where I think about Tati getting like we get so upset if we'd rush him or we'd have to like create this whole thing of like what we needed to do because like he would rush the whole week and then like Shabbos he gets to finally relax, and then or be like Cholamoy. It's like the Cholamoy would be great because he's not in a rush. He doesn't need to be in a rush.
Mhm.
We would go ahead and we'd go to Gettysburg or we'd go to Sugarloaf Mountain or we go to these different destinations where you can actually enjoy ourselves and enjoy the memory.
Yes.
Um,
I remember one time one circus, there was one circus where he was like almost like a different person. He was in such a good mood and he was so happy and just being with the kids and taking over trips with you guys and so like you said, so we have to rush, 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 rush. Yeah.
yeah, but that's the whole point. Like Erev Shabbos, as any from Jewish person knows, is it gets pretty hectic. Like our family, we try to have like a rule of like try to keep things simple, um, don't make it too complicated, and create a very calm environment. Like as best as we can, we're trying to keep this new tradition we have in our family. But I get anxiety at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon because I feel like no matter what time it is, like that Shabbos comes in, I know 2 o'clock everything has to be ready, and so I start like having like a little bit conniptions. But I'm getting better at it. Um, you know, was there any like preparations when you were growing up for Shabbos, or there really was nothing? It was just like
Well, actually, my mother did make a traditional Shabbos meal,
okay,
and she did like candles. She lit candles,
okay,
and we had chicken, we had chicken and chicken soup, and potato kugel and Russian kugel,
okay.
nice things like that.
And she'd
Yeah,
be just in charge of the kitchen the whole time. She wouldn't let you eat in the kitchen, right?
Right. Yeah, she
If I'm,
she
if I'm
got
not
it's not.
mistaken, she was. That's
Yeah,
what she was.
she did not like the kids being in the kitchen.
No kids were in the kitchen. That's why you gave us the opportunity to be in the kitchen, and that's why I can take care of stuff in the kitchen. And I normally
Right.
go ahead and like do the cooking and whatnot in my house. But it was just like what you guys would go to synagogue Friday night, which would you go to Saturday night?
No, we would Saturday Saturday morning. My mother would have us get all dressed up nicely and kick us out of the house to walk to shul.
Oh, you walked to shul.
Yeah, me and my sisters would walk to
Oh,
me
that's
and my
really
older sister would
sweet.
walk to shul. Yeah, me and Aunt
What time
Annie.
would shul start?
Oh my God, we would go to I don't know. We went to junior congregate. It was called
Yeah,
junior
but when
congregation.
we were junior
I don't
congregations,
I
you don't
don't
remember.
I don't remember what time it started. All I know is getting all dressed up and getting kicked out of the house. And as we were going out, my mother would yell after me, Charlene, pray for guidance.
I'm saying you were like a space cadet back in the
Yeah.
day.
Uh,
Back in the day,
I would have been diagnosed for sure with
I think
ADHD,
you're still diagnosed with ADHD.
hyperactive ADHD, yeah, the works.
The works, the
Yeah,
work.
right.
Okay. Um,
In those days, undiagnosed works. You were just
you know what? So
yeah.
many people growing up. probably in the 50s and 60s, must have been such a trip with all these people with like PTSD and like bipolar, unmedicated,
None
um,
of that was diagnosed.
no undiagnosed, unmedicated,
Right.
like some like autism scale
Yes.
people, like very like they have to have their afternoon tea exactly at 12, if not the world's gonna end. Horrible OCD that they just like beat their kids because like, oh, you scuffed up, your shoes a little bit the wrong way. Like all these messed up.
Yeah, well, I remember one time in school, I was I took out my ponytail and I decided to switch my hairstyle. I come to school with a ponytail and I took out my I was in the girls' room, took out my ponytail and brushing out my hair and like restyling it. And this girl says to me, says, you better put your ponytail back before your mother finds out. And I go, huh? So doesn't care. So I can take my ponytail and fix my hair any way I want. This girl's mother must have been like really strict with her that she wouldn't let her, she better not take out that ponytail or else.
I'm telling you, these parents back in the day were just undiagnosed, unmedicated mental disorders out to the wazoo, trying to like raise little children, and they figure like, oh, I could beat them as well, and it's socially acceptable.
It
Like
was,
it's
and
just,
it was.
I know that's why I said so. It's like a
uh,
freaking the memories. I saw your smile, like, it's fantastic. Yeah, I just dodge a fist here, dodge a fist there, and it was all fine. But
actually kept me in shape because I was running away from my father who was trying to beat me, so I had to run faster.
yeah,
So it gave me good exercise.
I actually remember this one girl when I was growing up talking about how her mother bit her shoulder.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. Like I didn't instigate
That's
more. I didn't
dangerous.
instigate more, but like she was
Uh-huh.
like taking off her jacket and she had short sleeves and there was a bite mark.
And boy, in this day and age,
This was like the 90s. So
oh
like
my
again, it was like,
goodness,
yeah. This was like the
oh
90s,
my
early
God,
2000s. So like
that's
it was
horrible.
like there still was like issues, but there
How
wasn't.
old was this girl?
I think maybe 15, 16, something like that. I forgot who it was, but I
Yeah,
remember
Child Protective Services should have been
seeing her
called on that.
taking off her
Oh
jacket,
my
seeing the bite mark, and she talking about how her mother bit her because she
God.
was upset with her or something like that.
God.
There was a lot of crazy people. I mean, we had plenty of people on our block that were just wackadoos,
Mm,
and not even wackadoos, just decent people, but they were like coming from like the fall of communism Russia. They were immigrants.
mhm,
I remember actually a janitor when I was in my school back in the day, and I was like second, third grade, and he used to sleep
mm,
in the boiler room of the
mhm,
school, and he couldn't speak English, but he could speak very broken words of English. So he was trying to get, and he was old too. So he was trying to
mhm,
get some of us kids to pick up after ourselves. And we're just the first graders, second graders, just dropping
mhm.
candy bar wrappers and whatnot. And he would say, Hadabich, 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 garbage.
Ah,
He was trying to say garbage, and he kept saying Hadabich, Hadabich. And as
uh-huh.
kids, we didn't understand. We just started making fun of him, like, Harbich, Harbich.
Mm,
Like he's probably some poor like immigrant from Russia, like engineer who now is just like trying to make ends meet here in America just because he can finally have a sense of freedom because of how terrible and torturous the communist regime was.
I remember meeting people like that who, the cook in our seminary,
Hmm.
would you believe, had a master's degree in chemical engineering from one of the universities in Russia.
Yeah.
Hmm.
When I was younger, I was like, why couldn't you just go get a degree? Why couldn't it just make it work out? And understanding that engineering, like, it's a
Hmm.
lot easier now.
Hmm.
They're making it easier. But
Yeah.
back in the day, it was very difficult to transfer degrees from other
Hmm.
countries.
Yeah.
You have to retake tests, and the tests aren't easy, and they don't want you to succeed, so they will make sure you fail, and you have to work through all of that. Or you can just go ahead and open up a laundromat.
Hmm.
Like that's
I remember meeting some professionals from Russia at the time who told me that, well, actually they said the United States standards were a lot uh, in a lot of professions, especially the medical profession, that we were much more advanced
hmm,
than they were in Russia. I was talking to a woman who she was a doctor in Russia, and she said in order for her, excuse me, in order for her to be able to practice medicine in the United States, she said she would have to take 2 years off, and she had a family to have
hmm.
to take care of. She'd have to take 2 years off and totally redo an internship.
Oh,
in
wow.
a United States hospital because she said our standards of medicine were so much more advanced than
Well,
the Soviet Union.
and that was, I think that was the thing, issue with uh an older sister. She was going in for a degree in social work, and they were like, "Oh, you need to do this one." I think it was like 1 semester free social work internship, unpaid. And she was like a single mother. She's like, how can I do that? I'm a single mother. And they're like, well, it's either that or nothing. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, she just didn't do it then. She just couldn't do it.
Mhm.
And she missed her opportunity. But like that's what's so frustrating and sad is that like there's certain restrictions that out of happenstance, just don't let people advance in this world.
Mhm.
But that's just how it works. That's just how it is. It's not perfect. Um, but what about were there like immigrants when you were growing up that you were friends with, their kids?
Yeah,
Besides that
there was
Italian one that was a mafia.
a
We talked about that already.
there was a Polish girl that lived across the street from me who I used to play with
Interesting.
all the time. Parents from Poland.
Jewish or not Jewish?
Yeah, I don't know. Good question. I don't know. I was little.
Well, no,
I
it's
was like
always interesting because like you
6 or
say you're
7.
1951, well, I would say 1956, 57 of when you
Right.
probably start playing with someone and their parents are Polish, you know, probably post-war World War II, like
Could have been, yeah.
could have
Could
been
have been Jewish.
something.
Yeah,
They
Jewish.
could have been Jewish,
I
not
had
Jewish.
I had one friend who her parents, I don't know what camp, whatever, but her parents were Holocaust survivors,
Hmm.
and they opened up a store in downtown Baltimore, like a grocery. They had like a grocery store,
Interesting.
and what I think is fascinating how people could go through a total harrowing experience, like the concentration camp, and get married and have a family and go into like like a mundane business, like
Yeah.
a grocery store, open up a grocery store and just pick up the pieces and keep going. After going through something unbelievably
That's why they went through it.
horrendous. Mm,
That's why they went through it, you know?
yeah.
It's I mean, some people hate this concept and hate this phrase, but you know, God gives you only what you can handle.
Mm,
And
mm,
it's
mm.
frustrating and sad. I mean,
Well, I remember visiting Israel for the first time in 1973 and meeting some of these taxi cab drivers and just ordinary taxi cab drivers. Maybe there were some artists in the art at Yafa in the art quarter there. And these people survived the camps, fought in the 48 war, and now we're driving a taxi, running a store, just very, very ordinary things. And I asked him, I said, how can you go through what you went through and then settle into such a ordinary, mundane life?
yeah,
And I think he said, you just do it. Yeah.
it's funny you say because I mean, halavai, but um, I was watching this YouTube short and it showed you there's this museum in Texas that has the first ever original photograph.
Oh my gosh.
That it was a photograph with like
Oh,
what it was like a sleet or some kind of
what's that?
metal sheet that was exposed to light in the direction of this open window, covered in this certain type of soot. And over like I think 24 hours, it was then the soot was removed, and you see a vague, like picture, and that was like the first ever picture. And that first
Gosh.
ever picture in the entire world is located in some out of like middle of nowhere museum in Texas.
Oh my God.
Like there's I that's why I always think about this one thing. It's a story in the Talmud. Um I forgot which rabbi, but this rabbi is walking with Satan, and the Satan takes him to a meat market, and the meat market, one side is a store that's selling all sorts of fresh, very good pieces of meat, very well cut at a very low price, and no one's buying. And then right next to him is a store that's selling this worm-filled, old, disgusting meat, and everyone's running to buy it. And the Satan tells this rabbi, this is the way of the world. And what that means, at least to me, is that the best stuff, the most important things, aren't necessarily the what the things that are the most popular or trendy or interesting or focused on.
Mhm.
And to just be wary of trends, which is what
Mm.
honestly what Tati was always big in making us understand of don't be a slave to trends, which I know you don't want to talk about this, so I'll bring it up very briefly. But that when we were talking about what's going on the college campuses, I saw a video and they were interviewing these two kids who were, with these pro Hamas, you know, groups, and they're like, "Oh, why are you protesting?" And they're like, "Oh, I'm from Colombia, and I heard that they're protesting here, so I came here." And NYU. And so
Mm.
he's like, "Okay, so why are you protesting? What's NYU doing?" Like, "Oh, they're just being affiliated with, the destruction and the genocide." And so the interviewer's like, "So what exactly?" "Oh, I don't know. I have to do more research, but we're just here, we're just and like it's just the useful idiots that are just slaves to trends that want to be there, be first. I even saw some trendy video of some guy doing like some kind of dance moves. And I was curious enough to see like what kind of hashtags he had, just to see like what's he doing, because I saw like he had over like thousands of views and tons of comments. And hashtags are there to get the attention of, you know, the algorithm. The main thing he had as his hashtag was Israel Palestine. It had nothing to do with Israel Palestine because it's such a noteworthy thing. Everyone's just being the slave to trends, and that's what the biggest issue is that slave to trend situation where it's like, oh, everyone's doing it. I want to do it because I want to be, popular. And then you also have all these news stations that they're also trying to be popular, so they just become slave to the trend as well, which is a whole other issue. Makes you think, eh?
But
You
I'm
know?
trying to think. I remember when I was in college
Yeah,
that I was a big leftist at the time,
yeah,
and I remember that kind of thinking where instead of one, it's like people became very intellectualized, and they became so intellectualized and so analytical that something that was uh, they lost their moral compass, like something that was so um black and white, something that you can tell this is evil, this is good. They like flipped it.
yeah.
Like for example, there was a book called Confessions of Nat Turner, and um, Nat Turner, I don't know if he was a slave or it was around the time of the Civil War. Took like a whole group of like very very innocent white people, and um, he and uh, he and a group of black people just slaughtered them.
Okay.
You know, these were women, these were children. No, with no rhyme or reason. And this book, Confessions of Nat Turner, took the whole idea that he was reacting to the oppressive um, slave environment at the time, and therefore it was like kind of like trying to justify this horrible slaughter, this horrible, like I said, massacre that he did. And that's the thinking on college campuses, where they're taking things that are, like I said, they're losing their moral compass. They're taking things that are obviously evil versus obviously good, and instead totally flipping it over and trying to analyze it and find excuses. And then they come off and feeling like, oh, I'm so intellectually superior because I have analyzed this and didn't just take it as face value of the face value of morality. And this is scary.
Well, it's
This is because this is what's I was watching Dr. Phil,
yeah,
and there was this Muslim woman who was trying to do just that. She was taking the massacre of October 7th and trying to flip it over to show how Hamas was reacting to the oppressive Israelis, yada, yada. And Dr. Phil cut her right off and said, I don't care. He says, you burn a baby in its crib. That is evil. That is wrong. And there's no excuse. And he would not let her try, just totally cut her off. And with a lot of times with morality, in order for you not to lose your moral compass and get too analytical, you can't get too analytical. You have to really look at something and but you have to look at something. There are times when to analyze something that's obviously right and obviously wrong, you're you're going to call evil good and good evil. And there's a pasuk from the Torah that says that cursed be those who call good evil and evil good. And you see that happening in a lot of walks of life.
Well, I was watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It's a cop show. It's a
I've
comedian.
seen it.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a
So there's this
comedy.
one guy who's being arrested,
Hmm.
and he's like, "I murdered her, but I murdered her for love." And then Andy Samberg, the detective, is like, "Cool story, bro. That's still murder." And so it's just like what it is. I mean, I remember when I was in college, and I didn't fall for it. I just gave in to whatever the teachers wanted because that's what it is. It's a shakedown of you giving into what they want and not having any
Yes.
individual thought. It's just whatever the professor says. If not, you fail.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
like what they're trying to do is they're trying to be like, oh, in their mind, it's like, oh, you think Santa is real? Well, Santa's fake. It's been fake the whole time, and I'm going to show you all the reasons why Santa's fake. And like that's what they think they're doing. They think they're removing the wool over your eyes. That's what the term is called. But if again, it's just like all you're trying to do is intellectualize this part of life when you're trying to wrap your head around like who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. And it's more interesting to say they're both bad and they're both good. And let me tell you why. Because I remember as a kid, I remember in the 90s and early 2000s, the trend in movies was really to give a really good backstory to the bad guy of like, oh, he was a good kid, but he was abused by his father, and then
Mhm.
unfortunately molested by his uncle, and then he was sold into slavery, this, that, the other. That's why he's the bad guy, but he really is a good, innocent person at heart. And like that was good for the first like 10, 15 years of storytelling. And then like people just got sick of it. And that's why I
Yes,
see.
Jack the Ripper did have a very sad. You
Sure.
need to feel sorry for him.
Well, again, it's that I think people are going to wise up, and I always believe in Gamze Yavor. You know,
But the question is the
what's the damage
damage.
going to be?
Yeah, because when you stop to think about it, this is what happened in Nazi Germany. You had a society that was extremely intellectual, extremely advanced. The German universities at the time were the best learning institutions in the world. And they became so over intellectualized and so analytical, they totally lost their moral compass until at the end of World War II, when everybody discovered the damage that was done. It was like, oh my God, how on earth did this horrible thing happen? How did people lose their moral compass? And what we're seeing now is this is how
Well, I mean,
over intellectualized, over analytical. And also, like you said, following a trend. Like I remember when I was in college, I think back to a lot of my leftist, atheistic thinking. And I think I was just trying to be part of the crowd. I think I was trying to fulfill this how can I say it, this intellectual role that I had of myself, like, someone who's really intellectual doesn't believe in God.
well, it's funny because I remember being in Israel, so like when I was 18 to 20, and thinking of like wanting to be that intellectual smarty pants guy who can overanalyze and talk over everybody and be always be right with their like very high level of verbiage and trying to one up the other person and just be calmly collected with his sweater vest and his cool necktie and his intellectual glasses and his slick black hair just talking over a
But
cup
you're
of tea with a
but you're blondie.
not
Is
really,
right. Well, lighter. You're
lighter
light brown.
with like holding a cigarette while discussing all sorts of
Filling your body
whatnots.
with carcinogens.
Nah, just trying to be that like that pompous ass that
Yeah.
like everyone has to listen to because they know he's right.
Oh, but you hit the nail on the head when you said pompous ass. You
Yeah, no,
hit
that's
the
what
nail
they're all a
right
bunch
on
of
that. Yeah.
college students now are just a bunch of pompous asses who are all trying to crave this approval from their professors, and
Mhm.
they still have the "fuck you, mom and dad" kind of attitude. They're still trying to go against their parents, and they're trying to fight for the little guy. So they think that these Hamas terrorists that slaughter babies and rape children is really good for being the little guy, and they're trying to intellectualize it and be like, well, what happened before October 7th? Well, they were put into a what do they call it? A an open air prison. And then you go ahead and people show videos of like what Gaza was then and what Gaza is now. And you're like, wait a second, I thought you said open end prison, so why are you showing all these mansions and beautiful architecture that just been bombed to oblivion because it's under all these tunnels, that they were used anyways. It's all horseshit. Hopefully I'll survive. Hopefully my family will survive. And in 10, 15 years, it's going to look back and be like, oh, these people were idiots. And what's great is now everything is recorded. You can't run away. And so all this whole idea of thinking that, I'm on the right side of history, well, they're going to be proven that they're not.
Mhm. So true. I'm wondering how many of them are going to feel. I mean, think back to how horrible the Germans felt when they saw the damage.
Yeah. I hope they commit suicide.
It was
Um, yeah, it is what it is. I don't have any sympathy for them. What does it matter? This one little girl, one college girl got her like eye poked out, not poked out, but poked.
Ooh.
With this one woman was like stabbing her with the with a Palestinian flag. I think it was in Colombia.
Oh my God.
It got so bad that they basically went ahead and said that oh, all classes now are going to be over Zoom. It's just they can't control the psychopaths that are there, and it's just getting worse and worse. And now it's a giant spread all over America and Europe when it comes to college campuses that everyone's trying to do whatever. There was even this Moroccan Moroccan asylum seeker from in Britain that stabbed and killed British police officer, if I'm mistaken, in order to cry out for the pleas of Gaza. Like it's all bullshit. Like they're just using it as a backdrop excuse just to go ahead and kill people and especially blame the Jews. SSDD. Like
You said something about like, we were talking about like over intellectualizing. There was I was watching a clip on YouTube. I forgot who she was, but it was some woman who was um going for Senate confirmation for some sort of I don't know, something in the medical field
yeah.
in the government. And so I think it might have been Josh Hawley
Hmm.
who simply said there was a difference between a man and a woman. And she goes, well, it's how you feel, and if you look at it this way or that, and she was like going through this whole intellectual thing, and he cut off and said, "You could not answer as a medical professional. You could not answer what every 2-year-old knows. Therefore, I cannot confirm your appointment."
It's well again, everything is a spectrum nowadays. Everything has to be talked about and everything has to have some kind of extra layer to it in order to complicate things to make it more interesting. It's something that I had issues with when I was in architecture school when I would be reading these books and these articles, and it would be a simple thing of like a man crosses the street, goes to the store, buys milk and eggs. They'll say, a man of some stature that felt it was quite interesting to and just elaborate and just will draw it out for like 15 pages, something you could have said in 5 seconds. And I remember
Mhm.
even having this whole discussion with my professor, like, why are we doing this? It's so stupid. And he said something along the lines of like, oh, when you're an intellectual or something that like that, you'll understand what it is, or it's like, or you know, I can't remember exactly what he said, unfortunately. But it was something along the lines of like, first off, shut up and read it. And second off, was like this is college and this is what's been given to you in college. And
Mhm.
like all it was doing was I told him like I have to check the dictionary every 2 seconds that I can't ever understand what the heck this article's talking about. Like I have to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And it's just because when you sit around, you have nothing else better to do. You go ahead and you write like an article that should take you 1 or 2 minutes to read, and you just draw it out for 5 hours.
Oh, yeah.
But again, that's what colleges are, and they're turning more and more into a joke. And the higher end colleges are now disgusting.
I felt that way in many respects about many therapists.
Yeah,
That many therapists um will do that, will over intellectualize and over analyze rather than seeing very concretely what's going on in the person's life. I told you about that, that 12-year-old boy that wrote that letter into that psychologist
no,
about, okay, this 12-year-old boy many years ago wrote a letter into one of the Jewish publications where there was a psychologist. He said he told his parents he wanted them to give him money to buy candy at the canteen. And he said he thinks he should be paid for doing jobs around the house. And so his parents told him, look, your mother doesn't expect money for what she does. I'm like, the father doesn't expect money for what he does. He says, part of being a family is, we all have our jobs around the house. We shouldn't be expected to be paid for it. So the psychologist, instead of being short and sweet and saying to this 12-year-old boy, your parents are trying to teach you a very important lesson about functioning in a family. If you want this garbage, it's just going to put holes in your teeth. So go around the neighborhood, do some jobs around the neighborhood. But your parents are trying to teach you a very important job. Instead, she starts. This story reminds me of the rabbi who the people come to him and he said, you're right to one person. And then he says, you're right to the other person, and went on for a page and a half drush that was so over intellectual, analytical. And I said to one of the rabbis at TA about that article, I said, this epitomizes why the psychological community is not serving the Jewish families as well as they could because of thinking like this.
I think it's a little less complicated than that. I think it's not that they draw out. I think a decent therapist knows what to say and how to say it. I think somebody needed to fill 2 pages, and he found a way to fill up the 2 pages.
She.
She, sorry.
Sexist.
Yeah,
Right away, you assumed it was a guy.
sure. Um, but I think when it comes to therapy, you have to take your responsibility. And when you're in a therapist, ask them how long do you think you'll be in the session. Be proactive with what you feel is appropriate. Don't just give the reins to someone else. Don't give as one therapist I spoke to said, don't give someone else that kind of power. If you feel like you only need a 1 or 2 sessions, do 1 or 2 sessions and that's it. If you feel you need a little more, then do a little more, but you have to take control over your life. And I think that's what therapists are all about, is that helping you take control over your life. And therapists need to analyze both sides to a situation.
Well,
Um,
I was talking to somebody who used to be a psychologist and got out of the profession because when he was applying for jobs, the people in the group practice asked him, "How well do you keep patients?"
how long ago was this, Seema?
This was during the 1980s.
Okay, so like 50 years ago, when they definitely
Do you think the profession has changed?
I think their profession has changed immensely. You know why?
Why?
They take insurance. They take insurance. Like why I don't need to keep one guy on retainer if 5 million people are waiting behind him to get something else.
Mhm.
We don't need to keep this person. I'll always have a client. It's just it's the way it is. That's why I think mental health has done leaps and bounds with what being able to make it accessible to the average person. I think yes, in the 80s they were trying to find ways to keep clients because it was still a new profession. It was very fresh, and it was still fresh enough for people to like not even be open about going to them. Imagine you have a profession where no one wants to admit that they actually see you.
Yeah.
So now it's a little more open. Now it's a little more
Mhm.
easier. Now they have insurance. They have all sorts of, amenities and whatnot. And also on top of that, they've also developed different skills on how to tackle situations and definitely found ways to, you know, make the person's life better by making them take responsibility and taking control. I think you've been exposed to a lot of negativity, a lot of negative therapists that, probably nowadays would have lost their license years ago.
Could
I
be.
think you just got dealt some really bad deck of cards, and then you've used that to be spiteful about other
Well,
people.
just remember, in all professions, there's the good, the bad, the ugly, and the criminal. All professions.
No, I agree. I agree. But Don the and as a profession in general, and you just don't try to go ahead and make it such a big deal.
Yes, and as we sit out here, I know you care about the ecology because the mosquitoes are having a nice dinner off of me.
Well, I'm glad we're gonna end this now, so you can go ahead and go back inside. I love you. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
Love
Take
you.
care. Bye.